Welcome to Brainstoryum. I'm Tizard, award-winning Dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author, and yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard, and this is episode 90 of Brainstoryum. Now, in the last show, I talked a bit about imagination compost, as I called it, and the ideas that we inevitably lose in the process of developing an early brainstorm into a fully fledged story, especially if you write like me, transferring initial handwritten, scribbly notes onto a laptop or computer as part of that development process. And having just had a difficult clear out of my hideously messy notepads, put up my hand, yes, that's the way it is, and I still have too many of them, I put the question to you, to handwrite or not to handwrite? Does handwriting give you an inspirational edge for that first draft compared with typing? Is there something about the tactile page that helps draw out your innermost thoughts? Or do you find it comforting to take time for creative inspiration away from screens? I was also scouting for some tips on how to better manage my own ever-growing pile of notepads, which are, always difficult to chuck out. The responses I received from my fellow writers were quite definitive. Alessandro Bozzo said, "For me, the laptop is just more convenient. I'm able to save my file to the cloud, so if inspiration hits me while I'm out without my laptop, I can access my draft on my phone or from another computer if available. I also have terrible penmanship, lol." Eric Montgomery said, "I'm all for direct onto the laptop myself. I can't read my handwriting. Plus, because of how I keep my notes stroke writing, I can also pull anything I write up on my phone and vice versa, and it's all fully encrypted." Patrick Towie said, "I don't handwrite because my writing is messy. I can sense a pattern forming here. What is this mysterious pattern?" Well, in a way, it's reassuring that I'm not the only writer whose handwriting is a disaster zone. Eric brought up encryption. Well, I'm tempted to add that our messy scrawl might actually qualify as a form of encryption if it wasn't potentially rendered useless by us not being able to read it ourselves. Now that's deep encryption. But what I'm trying to get to is this. Is there anyone out there who still believes in there being something special about the physical hand-to-pen, pen-to-paper connection? I've certainly read threads on social media in the past on some of the psychology around this, the way the simple act of putting pen to paper harps back to our first almost magical memories of learning to write and realising that we could create worlds this way, and even surprise ourselves with the ideas that seem to flow out of us with a simple twirl of a pen. But I'd say if we've been typing for enough years, this will also inevitably become a kind of muscle memory that carries the exact same associations over time. I learned to touch type back when I was about 17 or 18, and I now type faster than anyone I know, except my mum, who is fast. And I can type much faster than I can handwrite, probably double the speed or probably more. I haven't counted, I haven't checked. So in general, I can more easily keep up with the flow of my thoughts whenever I get a sudden flurry of ideas. If the romanticism around handwriting still exists, well, it may have faded in a lot of us writers for practical reasons. Handwriting a card or a note or even a letter is one thing, very personal, presuming the recipient can actually read your very personal thoughts. But when it comes to creative writing, maybe the best method is the one you feel most comfortable with and that gets your words down in the most efficient way possible. I think for me, what the physical page does is it gives me permission to scroll down something that is probably rubbish. Those very first impressions as I brainstorm ideas are allowed to be messy and all over the place, just like my handwriting. It's kind of appropriate. Things begin to take a clearer form, in both senses of the word, when I'm typing up those scrappy notes and starting to take them in new directions on the neat digital page. So I think I have to carry on as I have been, except I'm determined now to label things up and cross a line through pages once I've finished moving that story onto my laptop. So my future self has no qualms or concerns about chucking the blooming thing out. It's all about being kind to your future self, which is easy to lose sight of when your present tense self is whipped up in an inspiration frenzy. Now, before we move on to some new rounds of Exquisite Corpse, which will inevitably lead to more scribbles, but it's okay because you can chuck them out later. The writing prompt I invited your stories and ideas on in the last show was a curious word combination, the buzzing diner. I wasn't sure if this one might lead to stories about strange creatures, or if there might be some more realism-based interpretations. I received a mixture. As ever, I find that the only thing you can predict about my fellow writers' responses is their unpredictability and the sheer range of unique interpretations. Such is the power of your imagination. Eric Montgomery wrote, "The booths filled with jurors fresh from the courthouse, their voices bouncing off chrome and tile. Plates clattered, spoons chimed, and by the lunch rush, the whole diner buzzed as if the walls themselves were in on the gossip." I love this. There's a kind of music to it, subtle music, and you found a way to interpret the buzz as part of an atmosphere that's just kind of building and crystallizing. It's like a snapshot. Thank you, Eric. Alessandro Bozzo wrote, "Tessa sat in her booth, salivating over the hamburger on the table in front of her. The smell of fries and ketchup permeated the air. The busy diner was abuzz with the sound of patrons gossiping. An old light fixture above her head made a buzzing noise as its bulb flickered. She had placed her cell phone on vibrate. Nothing was going to interrupt this lunch. As if to mock her, the phone buzzed to life with a text message. Tessa sighed and glanced at the screen. 'It escaped. Need you back in the lab ASAP.' As she finished reading the message, a strange-looking insect buzzed past her ear, alighting onto her burger. Tessa's eyes opened wide with concern. 'Now, how did you get out?' I love how we're sort of nudged in all these different directions as to who or what is causing the buzzing. Is it the lights? Is it her phone? And then we get a glimpse of what's really happening. Some kind of experimental species of bug. Through the warm scent of burger and fries, I'm picking up signs of a creepy backstory already." Thank you, Alessandro. That was great. Paul Macmillan, also known as Bookmarks Love and Law on X, wrote, "The diner had always been a little odd, but now the air itself hummed, vibrating with a soft golden shimmer that seeped through the cracks of the storage room door. Locals whispered it was just faulty wiring, but those who lingered long enough swore they saw winged shadows darting across the linoleum floor. Strangers came, drawn by the strange hum and the taste of pie that somehow always reminded them of their happiest memory. Mrs. Kettle, still mourning her husband, found herself steadied by the laughter of new patrons and the unseen magic that poured warmth into her heart. Perhaps the gateway hadn't been opened by accident. Perhaps it knew she needed saving too. Ooh, lots of hints of different elements going on here. A winged shadow, so there's a real threat going on, and pies that fill you with nostalgia, and more. And at the end, a gateway. This scene itself feels like a gateway opening to something more, some kind of adventure. Thank you, Paul. Nick Vrekar wrote, "The diner had looked ordinary on the outside, but Claire knew it wasn't. Inside there was a door, a special door. Sitting inside in one of its red booths, it unnerved her. The other customers were still. There was a constant buzz, not from the lights, but from the people." Real sense of mystery building in this one. It feels quite sci-fi. In a way, is it scarier if people themselves are buzzing, literally, as opposed to a creature? One to think about. Thank you, Nick. Paul Monteith, also known as Mostly Paul or Quantum Fairy on Blue Sky, wrote, "In a dining room, a cloud of flies coalesced into a man. Server Gwen approached the unexpected diner. 'I'm sorry, sir, but you need a reservation.' The man looked at Gwen. 'Check your reservations. You'll see a Lord Beelzebub, table for one at 1. Gwen was sure the diner had a mouthful of flies and was forming his words by shaping the buzzing sound with his lips. When a fly landed on Lord Beelzebub's table, Gwen instinctively swatted it with a menu. Lord Beelzebub whimpered and his body buzzed with agitation. 'Sorry,' Gwen said, 'we've had fly issues today,' and then inexplicably added, 'It wasn't one of yours, was it?' Lord Beelzebub looked at Gwen with sadness. 'Not anymore.' Now this is proper creepy and humorous as well. Interesting combination of person and creature, I guess, in the form of a demon or the devil, with flies making up his actual body. This is a buzzing diner. And it makes a kind of intuitive sense in its grossness as a sort of manifestation of evil. Thank you, Paul Monteith. Right, well, it is now time for us to dip once more into the endless story possibilities that await us in The Socks of Destiny. That's right, and for those who haven't played before or listened before, Exquisite Corpse creates a very bizarre sentence by mixing the words and phrases from different players until the sentence goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. And so it is with some trepidation that I reach into the describing word sock for our first word, which is from Tim Hardy from the Spotlight Indie podcast. Wondrous is our first word. Feels like a positive start. Our noun for what or who was wondrous is from Kimberly. Midnight. The wondrous midnight. Oh, that's rather lovely. Or scary? I don't know. Could you make that spooky? Let's see what happens with a word from, or a phrase from our action sock. This is from Mariah. This is a long one. Squeed into the microphone to attract the attention of. Also, we have, oh, that's just so weird. That's so Exquisite Corpse. Of course, it doesn't make sense to start with. That's the whole challenge. So far, the wondrous midnight is squeeing into a microphone to attract the attention of someone, something. Could the wondrous midnight be a very optimistic sounding indie band? I guess. Next word, describing word, is from Paul Benfield. Illuminated. Okay, so last word is from, Paul Benfield again. Well, you never know what's going to come out of the sock or who from. Tree trunk. Okay, an illuminated tree trunk. Okay, so the entire Exquisite Corpse is the wondrous midnight squeed into the microphone to attract the attention of the illuminated tree trunk. I'm thinking this is probably someone dressed up as a tree trunk. Because I'm still picturing a scene of like a mini concert, a little gig. If the wondrous midnight is some kind of indie band, but then if people are dressed up as tree trunks and things like that, it makes me think, well, this is a costumed event. Could it be like a fantasy con type thing? But yeah, I really feel like I'm clutching at straws with this one. Illuminated tree trunk makes me think of Christmas. It's maybe a Christmas tree. But to make a story out of this, I think you'd have to work out why. What is this urgent need that this band, the Wondrous Midnight, have? What's the reason for being so desperate to catch the attention of someone dressed as an illuminated tree trunk? Something's gone wrong on stage, something like that. Someone's crept onto the stage who shouldn't be there. Panic, a killer, a monster, who knows? I'm not sure if I'm finding a way through this Exquisite Corpse, but give it time. Sometimes the most challenging ones can be the most ripe for imagination. But moving on swiftly, because I do need to produce 3 writing prompts today, one of which I will choose to write a scene or a story from. So the first word for our new Exquisite Corpse is from Paul Thomas, murderous. Okay, who or what was murderous? This is from Abra of the Stories and Stanza podcast. Blood moon. A murderous blood moon. Interesting. Kind of works. It's feeling quite Halloween. I know it's a little bit premature for that, but hey. The action sock brings us a phrase from Alessandro Bozzo. Eagerly awaited the trial of. So someone who is in fact a murderer is awaiting the trial of someone else. Next word is from Wendy. Inner, as in something that's inside, usually an emotion or a psychological trait or tendency. Okay, what's coming next? This is from Alessandro Bozzo again. Bubble wrap. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine finding a kind of therapy that helps you find your inner bubble wrap? What is it, that weird manic moment when you're stressed out and you just want to crush some bubble wrap? That could be a kind of therapy. I can imagine that. But the entire Exquisite Corpse which is again, of course, ridiculous to start with. The murderous blood moon eagerly awaited the trial of the inner bubble wrap. Ooh, eagerly awaited the trial of. So maybe these therapists who are offering find your inner bubble wrap popping demon are being taken to court over something. Because bubble wrap therapy should be illegal. Okay, I'm gonna stir the green tea and see if this helps, as it sometimes does. Okay, let's think about this. The murderous blood moon. I love it. It's so Halloween. But eagerly awaited the trial of the inner bubble wrap. Okay, so I've just looked up blood moon because I'm thinking, isn't that when it goes as a funny colour for some reason? Because this could be a key to a story idea if I were to use, or if you were to use, this Exquisite Corpse. So apparently it's a popular name for the appearance of the moon during a total lunar eclipse when it turns a deep reddish colour. And that's because as the moon passes through the Earth's shadow, the sunlight that bends through the Earth's atmosphere has its blue light scattered away, allowing the longer wavelength red light to pass through and illuminate the moon. So it's an odd sort of visual phenomenon that, occurs during a total lunar eclipse. And it's just fascinating to me that it's come up next to murderous blood moon. And yet we have bubble wrap, inner bubble wrap on the other side of this Exquisite Corpse, quite ridiculously. Bubble wrap is so unsinister that I'm struggling to put it next to this murderous blood moon. But then again, I think maybe that's the key. How do you make something sinister out of bubble wrap? Not literally, not like balloon animals or anything. I'm just thinking, it makes me think of a card shop, like a card and gift shop. And perhaps this is some trial, because when the action says eagerly awaited the trial of the inner bubble wrap, it makes me think, okay, let's try and, cast our net a little bit wider and consider, could this be a trial other than a court case? Some other kind of trial, burden, difficulty. Something lurks in the card shop, something that is observed by someone or possibly unleashed by someone who is a member of a cult to do with the blood moon. Now that sounds like you could do something with it. But this may be something for the pause button, I think. So I will just move straight on to the third and final Exquisite Corpse. Let's see what we have. First word is from, they're all bunched together, Nicholas Bozzo, forgetful. Okay, let's see what our next word is. This is from Paul Thomas, elevator. Or could be somebody who elevates others, like very positive about them, makes them feel better about themselves. Because how would you have a forgetful, like literal elevator? We shall see. The action is from Alessandro Bozzo, flipped a coin with. It's an interesting action. Next word, I'm just going to move straight on to the next word. This is from Dave, cursed. Ooh. Who or what was cursed? This has got caught between my fingers, so it must come out of the sock. This is again from Paul Thomas. Red panda. Oh, but they're so cute. How is this possible that there is such a thing as a cursed red panda? Oh, unless that's the name of, I don't know, really weird, twisted publishing company. It's a publishing house called the Cursed Red Panda. I'd publish with them. So altogether, the third and final Exquisite Corpse, I'm going to need the pause button, is the Forgetful Elevator flipped a coin with the Cursed Red Panda. Okay, let's think about the different parts of this. I'm drawn to the part about flipping a coin with, because that's to do with randomness, and as you may have guessed, I do enjoy messing around with randomness. A forgetful elevator? Has anyone ever written about a haunted elevator that bargains with people? People who work for a twisted publishing house called the Cursed Red Panda? It's like they're going for kind of cute and spooky. What has the ghost of an elevator witnessed? If we just think about that for a little while. The small moments when people are alone or think that they're alone. Maybe they forget about that little CCTV camera. Maybe the camera's broken. Maybe it's been vandalised. Maybe a crime is committed in this elevator. Then the perpetrator of that crime is on the elevator and it jolts to a stop. It's stuck. And that's when this ghost of the elevator makes a bargain with them. Could that work? Maybe. I feel like there's nothing that's quite jumping out at me yet about any of these exquisite corpses, but this is the ultimate challenge of a writer's imagination. This is what it's all about, people. So I'm going to use the pause button and try and write a scene or a story based on one of these with some extra green tea. Here goes. Okay, so before I start reading out my draft, this story has got a little bit out of control and is turning into about 3,500 words, maybe, which is way too long to read out on this show. But if I start from the very beginning, then stop about 1,000 words in, you will miss a juicy part. So I'm going to quickly summarise what happens in the beginning so I can skip ahead a little bit. My protagonist is Sian, who has a new job in a publishing house of literary works, but hankers for something more, book-wise. In her lunch hour, she stumbles into a shop her colleagues would all sneer at, a comic book shop called Under the Blood Moon Comics, because I have gone with the murderous blood moon eagerly awaited the trial of the inner bubble wrap, or would be revealed. As she buys a graphic novel, the shopkeeper has an unusual way of explaining what urban fantasy is, and that's where I'll dive in to the story. As if sensing her interest, the shopkeeper turned his dusky eyes upon her with fresh intensity. His tone was deep, yet easy, conversational. The terrors of the forest have retreated as we've moved away from it and built ourselves new spaces to live, he said. But we bring our hauntings with us, don't you think? We carry the folklore of the forest within us wherever we may go. This, he raised his eyebrows at the street outside the window, this is our self-made forest. We build our dreams, our aspirations, ever outwards, but our nightmares are never far behind. They lurk in every shadow, in the very brickwork that surrounds us, the history that breathes in every chimney pot. I love the way you put that. So beautiful, Sian blustered, her cheeks warm. You must be an author too? She gestured at the shop's interior to make it clear she meant like these other authors, not like me. The idea that this poetic stranger might guess she was an aspiring author made her stomach shrivel to a pea. He thanked her, and they exchanged a few more pleasantries as he tapped numbers into the card terminal. Sian was just murmuring her goodbye when the man reached under the counter and pulled out a small package. A free gift for my 100th customer this month. Oh, wow, really? Thank you. She turned it over, tracing the string that crisscrossed the brown paper package. It was light and roughly oblong. Through the slight squish of bubble wrap through the paper, the flatness of a small book poked through. A notebook, probably? A folded note was tucked under the string, which, for some reason, Sian could only train her eyes to read properly after she'd left the shop, stumbling out her thanks. It read, "Inspiration costs nothing. It is a flame we artists pass between each other, knowing full well that to read is to drink from the well, and to write is to drink from the same well while pouring new water into it. The wrapping is your unravelling. Use the bubble wrap with care." Her eyes darted over that last line again, unable to match it with the poetic tone of the rest. The bubble wrap? She slipped the package into her bag and didn't touch it again until evening. On the train home from work, Sian imagined tugging on that string and peeling away the brown paper while snuggled on her sofa, wrapped with anticipation. Dinner was a microwave meal, so that could wait. But when she got home and stomped up the stairs to her flat, she found she couldn't sit down. She switched on her desk lamp, the desk that was officially her writing desk, but had gradually become stacked up with newspapers and books, and tore the package open over the desk, shoving the string down the length of it until it dropped free. Inside was a black velveteen notebook with Under the Blood Moon comics printed on the front inside its logo, a maroon fuzzy-edged circle. Very smart. Sian raised her eyebrows at the thick, creamy pages. No expense had been spared on this freebie. But the bubble wrap. At first, she thought there was something wrong with her eyes. A rusty red haze seemed to hover around the sheet of bubble wrap, which proved to be roughly A4 size once shaken out. She held it under her nose, narrowing her eyes. Inside each air pocket drifted a tiny smudge of dark amber red, a sort of scorched colour. She peered closer at one of them. It wasn't a stain, but a bead of rust-red gas swelling under each tiny plastic dome. Her heart fluttered. Her gaze flew back to the note which had scattered onto the table in her haste. The wrapping is your unravelling. Use the bubble wrap with care. This gas, it couldn't be some kind of drug, could it? But surely the amounts were too minuscule. And who would do that anyway? If this could be some illicit substance, how tricky it would be to seal a single puff of gas into each and every bubble on this sheet. It was too bizarre. She ran her nail along the edge of a see-through dome. For free as well? Sian creased over in a spasm of giggles. It was just so ridiculous. Presumably, she was meant to believe this was magical or something. She was meant to be like a little kid in a magic shop, believing in the power of colourful toys and boxes of tricks. For all his poetic ramblings and philosophising, did the shopkeeper really see her this way? Still sniggering, she slouched forwards, steadying herself against the desk, but at the gentle pop of a bubble, she snatched her hand away and stared. A tiny cloud of red exploded silently from where her nail had caught it, a volcanic eruption in miniature. Forgetting her laughter instantly, she ducked to sniff the evaporating puff before it dispersed. An odd smell of burning coal, mixed with rust, hit her nostrils. The rust scent lingered, a bit like blood. Sian's eyelids drooped. She staggered back, gripping the arm of her chair. Stumbling sideways, she managed to lever herself into her seat as her legs turned to sponge. The moment her body slumped against the back of the chair, she sank into wild dreams. Her dream body swooped from under her, up through the chimney, realising a second too late that she had somehow squeezed, paper thin, through a crack in the brickwork. A blackened tunnel rushed past her, and she inhaled the night air at the top. A landscape of rooftops spread out before her, a jumbled patchwork brushed with moonlight. Chimneys punctuated the slopes, their stubs like blunt pencils poking the sky. No longer smoking, but blackened by history, by memory. Sian sat like a cat in wonder, observing it all, but sensing more than seeing. Under her feet, crowded layers of history, Victorian times and beyond, all crushed together. Closing her dream eyes, she could sense images, echoes of the past, people walking past, shuffling over each other like negatives from an old-fashioned camera. It was just as the bookseller had said. The stones, they whispered to her. Bricks creaked, the pressure of years gathered tight, wincing through the mortar, haunted by the lives they kept. Sian roved the rooftops, a darkened whisper. She crept over the tiles, marvelling at their solidity against her shadow-like feet and hands. The tiles weren't quite cold to the touch. It was as if they held the memory of coldness in their hard, smooth slate. But she was as light as the air itself and free to roam the night. It was on the roof of the museum that they gathered. Chalk white as the full moon, the creatures were too solid to be ghosts. A concrete angel with sharp hollows for eyes tested her thick wings against the night. A cherub unclenching its chubby fingers. A gargoyle with its tongue dangling stretched a clawed paw onto the slate. A round-faced gremlin with a chipped nose turned its weathered features upon Sian. Pale, smudged around the edges, with limbs stiff from decades, if not centuries, of waiting. And that is how, or is the beginning of how, the murderous blood moon eagerly awaited the trial of the inner bubble wrap. Or close enough. Not so much murderous blood moon, unless there really is some dried blood in those mysterious puffs of gas, whatever they are. And no, it won't be just a dream. If a dream impacts on the character's objective reality, then what you have is a Dreampunk story. Look up Cliff Jones Jr. or whatisdreampunk.com for more information on this subgenre. So yes, I got properly stuck into this story in the end, although I haven't quite finished it, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of editing to do. I'm hoping I can make it good enough to include it in my next book-length collection on weird creatures. So you will, if that happens, you will have a chance to find out the ending and read it in time when it's written and when it's out there. But in spite of this story growing legs and scampering over the rooftops, I have to tell you, this writing exercise was on very dodgy ground to start with. After reading out those 3 exquisite corpses, this was very much one of those times when I truly did not know which one I was going to pick and what on earth I was going to write. After some faffing around, I picked this Exquisite Corpse and gave myself 20 minutes as a starter to basically give myself permission to drop this prompt if it didn't work after that period, in which case I would just try the next one and see what happens. No guarantees, there never are. I initially started writing about someone opening up a compact disc that had been wrapped up, and it was the disc that was printed with the red logo of Under the Blood Moon as an album title or the name of a band, and it was the idea of music or strange sounds, maybe a strange message recorded on that CD, which transported my character when she listened to it, though I really wasn't sure where. I was just sort of forcing myself to write whatever came into my head without worrying too much about it, as is my way, but all the time fishing for something that snagged my attention, anything that just got me even slightly excited. The CD or music idea fizzled out after a couple of paragraphs, I think, but what it gave me was a hint that I was in the mood for some kind of portal. So even as I abandoned the CD idea and turned my attention to the bubble wrap instead, I knew I'd worked out that this was the flavour of what I was after today. Some kind of elevation, transportation to another way of being. And that's where the early images of this story began to emerge. So, from absolutely nothing to something, and certainly a story I never would have written were it not for this particular Exquisite Corpse. And I don't know about you, but bubble wrap will never quite seem the same. Am I right? I just want to emphasise as well, for those who might be thinking, oh, I'm not sure if I could do that, this is the whole point of these writing prompts. They take you to places you would never otherwise go, would never dream of on your own. And the way to get there is in the writing itself. I could have stared out the window for who knows how long, twiddling my pen. I could have paced until I wore a hole in the carpet. Nothing would have revealed the story idea I ended up writing except the act of writing itself. I put pen to paper. You might want to use your laptop, whatever. I pushed myself to keep going, keep searching through the writing. And after many minutes of stumbling around, that's what caused me to discover the idea that then grew. So what about a new writing prompt for you, my talented listeners, to try? Because this magical journey stuff is free for anyone to try. The Wondrous Midnight might be a little bit safe, I suppose. The Murderous Blood Moon, if you do want to get murderous with it, well, that's kind of the opposite. You could have a go at that. There's always the Forgetful Elevator, if the Murderous Blood Moon might be a bit too dark for you, although we are approaching Halloween. Whatever you choose, you know what to do. Hit the contact button on any page footer at annatizard.com. Write about a paragraph or so, either a scene or a description of a story idea or a character, and just make sure you get it to me by the Friday after this show's release so that I have time to include it in the recording. If you have an author website or a social media handle you'd like me to quote, make sure you include that as well so I can give you a proper, thorough shout out. Until next time, go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstorium. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, info@annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.